The ongoing war between US, Israel, and Iran has now started disrupting the movement across the Strait of Hormuz or the global energy corridor. Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps have declared the Strait of Hormuz to be closed. Now, because of such a declaration, the movement across this corridor has been severely impacted. So in this session, we are going to understand how is this impacting the entire world, with our focus particularly being on India. Hello students, welcome to Drishti IAS. My name is Saloni Nadir. Let's get started. So I told you that Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps have declared the Strait of Hormuz to be closed, and they have also issued a warning which says that any vessel that's attempting to pass through the waterway would be set ablaze. Such warnings are coming in from Iran. However, there are certain military officials of the US which are saying that no such thing has formally happened. The Strait of Hormuz is not formally closed, but such declarations are coming in, which practically has closed this Strait of Hormuz, which means that Strait of Hormuz is practically closed. Even though if it is not formally closed, it is still practically closed, because we see that the traffic at this strait has now significantly reduced. It has reduced by about 80% because of all the instability and chaos that's going on in the region. The traffic has significantly reduced by 80%. And we are also seeing visuals of ships being stuck in a queue because they are not being able to move forward. They're not being able to move appropriately because the movement has been disrupted. So these things are happening, and I just told you that Strait of Hormuz is the global energy corridor. Now, because trade in this region is being disrupted, movement in the region is being disrupted, it automatically has an immediate effect on the oil prices. So the oil price has seen a spike of 1%, or more specifically 1.4%, because the Brent, which is the global benchmark for crude oil, Brent prices jumped $1.17 or 1.4% to $82.57 for a barrel. So because the movement across this corridor has been disrupted, this strait has been disrupted, a lot of global trade is being disrupted. And because of that, an immediate effect that we are seeing is a spike in the oil price, is a spike in Brent oil price. So this is the situation at the moment. But here we are first going to understand, why is the Strait of Hormuz so important for the world, particularly for India? And what should be the way forward for India? Should we start looking for alternatives? What alternatives do we have? And what should be our way forward in the long run? So let's first understand how important is the Strait of Hormuz. Where is the Strait of Hormuz? Here. This is the Strait of Hormuz. Iran and Oman, and here we have the Strait of Hormuz. Now this is the global energy corridor because 20% of the global energy trade meaning our LPG, LNG, crude oil, etc. 20% of the world's energy trade passes through this strait. So this is a very important strait for the entire world. And if we talk about India, for India also this is very, very important, because India, we know, is heavily dependent on oil imports, crude oil imports. 85 to 90% we are dependent on import. And out of this 85 to 90%, some 50% of our import happens through this region. 50% of our trade, 50% of our crude oil import also happens through the Strait of Hormuz. So why do we need such a huge amount of crude oil? India, if you know, is the third largest oil consumer in the world. We have huge energy demands. We are the third largest oil consumer in the world because we have a huge population. There is a lot of energy requirement that we have for our transportation, right? For our transportation, then also for our industries. So we require a lot of crude oil to come in from outside. A lot of it is imported. 85 to 90% of it is imported. And out of that 85 to 90% also, 50% depends on the Strait of Hormuz. This is how crucial, how critical, how strategic the Strait of Hormuz is for India. And whatever disruption we are seeing here, it is going to impact India also. It is going to impact our oil prices also. But all that is a different dynamic. It will depend on other factors also, like how much reserves do we have at the moment, what is the buffer that we have at the moment. So we might not immediately see a spike in our oil prices, but if the situation is not brought under control, then things might get serious for us as well. So we'll understand the alternative shipping routes that India can look at the moment. So I told you that 50% of whatever we import is coming from the Strait of Hormuz. Now, if the Strait of Hormuz is formally closed, or if it remains closed for a very long period of time, for a prolonged period of time, what is going to happen? We'll have to start looking for alternative shipping routes, right? So we have the Cape of Good Hope. Cape of Good Hope as one of our alternative shipping routes. Cape of Good Hope is here, the southern side of Africa. Now, when we look at this, first of all, there's an interesting thing about the Cape of Good Hope also. This originally was called the Cape of Storms. It was not called the Cape of Good Hope. It was renamed as the Cape of Good Hope because this provided a way to Asia. This became a way to enter India and to enter Asia. That's why the name was changed from Cape of Storms to Cape of Good Hope. Now, Cape of Good Hope is one of the options that we have, but we need to understand that Cape of Good Hope is here in the southern part of Africa, whereas we are talking about the Strait of Hormuz, which is here. So practically, geographically, this will not make a lot of sense if we keep importing our crude oil from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain. Geographically, it will not make sense that we reach here and then we go to India, because to do that also we'll require a lot of internal pipelines. If we have to bypass the Strait of Hormuz, we'll have to require a lot of internal pipelines also. And pipelines, when we talk about them, they have very limited capacity, limited infrastructure. So we are not doing great in that direction. That's why if we are looking at the Cape of Good Hope, then we'll have to start diversifying our options more. We'll have to start looking at importing our crude oil from West Africa or more from US, etc. So we'll have to look at the western side of the market more. But one problem with Cape of Good Hope is that, or using this route, is that it is going to significantly increase the number of days and the number of and our import bills. Because right now when we use the Strait of Hormuz, let's say we receive our barrels of oil in 2 weeks or 3 weeks. But if we start using the Cape of Good Hope, if we look at other options, if we start relying more on the other options, it is going to increase our time by some 2 to 4 weeks. So we might have to wait for 1 more month. And when for 1 more month the ship is continuing its journey, we'll require more and more money. So the freight cost is going to increase. And when the freight cost is going to increase, our import bill is going to increase. And in turn, our oil prices at home will increase, because this is a costlier route. Because it's a longer route. So it's a costlier route. Next option is to use the Suez Canal. We can use the Suez Canal also. We can use this part as well, the Bab el-Mandeb as well. But again, because there is instability in this region, and Suez Canal is also very narrow, there is limited capacity in comparison to Strait of Hormuz that we have over here. There is limited capacity, and again, if we have to bypass this thing, we'll have to rely more on pipelines over here. If we have to entirely bypass, because right now most of our crude oil is coming from Iraq, Saudi Arabia, Kuwait, Bahrain, Qatar, UAE. Most of our crude oil is coming from all these regions. That is why geographically it makes more sense that we use Strait of Hormuz and we reach the Arabian Sea and then we reach India. But if we have to bypass this region altogether and move to this region, we'll have to rely on pipelines. Again, there we have limited infrastructure. And here also, because there's instability in this entire region, let's say in the near future, if the instability increases or if it moves towards Suez Canal also, then what options will we have? So these are some things that India will have to navigate through at the moment, because this entire region is under chaos right now. So we'll have to look at diversifying our options, West Africa, US, etc., or maybe start relying more and more on Russia. But the problem with Russia would be that we know that right now with our trade deal with the US time and again has been emphasizing that we need to start reducing our imports from Russia. Russian crude oil is very cheap at the moment, and we need to stop, India kind of needs to start reducing that import dependency on Russia because of the Russia-Ukraine war that is happening. So that is going to cause another problem for India. India will have to navigate all these issues very, very diplomatically. How do we keep, how do we reduce our import bills, and how do we keep meeting our energy demands? Because our energy demands are not reducing at the moment. We have a huge population that we have to cater to. So we have a huge energy demand also. So if we look at the oil stocks that India has right now, in the beginning I told you, will the oil prices significantly increase for India right now? So it depends on a lot of things. What kind of buffer do we have? What kind of strategic petroleum reserves do we have? So right now India has adequate stocks of crude oil and energy products. Energy products like petrol and diesel for the next 25 days each. So right now we have a buffer stock. Other than this, over and above this, we also have our strategic petroleum reserves. These are the reserves that we keep. This is the buffer that we keep for our energy products. So here there are 3 SPRs that we have. One is in Visakhapatnam, one is in Mangalore, and one is in Padur. So there are the 3 strategic petroleum reserves that we have. This 25 days of buffer does not include the buffer of our strategic petroleum reserves. If we add this, it is going to increase the 25 days of buffer that we have. So right now the officials have said, the government has said that we have adequate stock to take care of things at the moment. But if the situation is not brought under control, then we'll have to start looking for other alternatives as well. So what should be the way forward for India? Way forward A is going to be diversifying our options, looking for alternative routes. But a more sustainable approach over here in the long run would be start relying more and more on renewable energy. We start to need to rely more and more on renewable energy, because we need to reduce our import dependency at the moment. That can happen if we start relying more on renewable energy. If we start investing more in our electric vehicles, in the technology, in the infrastructure, the charging infrastructure, etc. Then if we start looking at the future fuels like green hydrogen, cleaner fuels, future fuels, green hydrogen. So we'll have to start doing all these things. We'll have to look for other options in order to meet our energy demands, because the energy demands are not significantly going to reduce. We'll need that for our industry. We'll need that for our transportation. So that is going to be there. So in order to take care of all our energy demands, we'll have to start investing more and more in our renewable energy sources so that the import dependency comes down. So this should be the ideal way forward for India, that while we navigate the entire situation diplomatically and in the right direction, but in the coming decades, we'll have to rely more and more on shifting our energy sources so that this kind of instability, this kind of volatility, when it happens, we are not placed negatively. So that was all for this video. I hope you enjoyed the discussion that we had over here. Now we look at a practice question. But before we do that, you know that there is this new course for you, which is the Studio GS Foundation live online course. And the admissions to this course are already open. And this course is your one-stop UPSC preparation kit, because here you're completing both your prelims and main syllabus in 14 months. And you also have 3 different mediums to choose from: Hindi, English, and English. So hurry, admissions are already open. You can call us at 87501 87501, and you can also download the Drishti Learning app. And the most important thing, if you wish to avail a very good discount on this course, then you can use my coupon code, which is SALONI, Saloni, all in capital letters only, and you will be able to get the maximum discount for yourself. So don't wait, go ahead, call us on this number and all your queries will be entertained. Now let's look at a practice question. With reference to India's crude oil imports, consider the following statements. 1. In recent years, Russia has emerged as one of the largest suppliers of crude oil to India. 2. A large share of India's crude oil imports from the Middle East passes through the Strait of Hormuz. 3. India imports more than 80% of its crude oil requirements. Choose the correct statements. A. 1 and 2 only. B. 2 and 3 only. C. 1 and 3 only. D. 1, 2 and 3. Please attempt this question and provide your answers in the comment section. Thank you for watching.
For more informative content, like, share and subscribe, and do not forget to press the bell icon to get the notifications.